Okay, calm down. You got limits, man. You got limits, man. Okay, calm down.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Katie Halper Show. We have a very exciting show for you today. We have a chocked up full of special segments and guests. We are going to be talking about Epstein. We're going to be talking about the West Bank. We're going to be talking about human rights lawyers getting detained and Gaza tribunals in Istanbul, for example. But before we start the show, I, of course, want to invite everyone. No, more than invite. I want to urge everyone to give this show a thumbs up, give it a like. That's a free way to support this show and also fight back against algorithmic suppression. So again, you just do a thumbs up. That's a like. Also, if you haven't already subscribed to the show, please do subscribe by hitting subscribe and then pressing the bell. That way you don't miss any of these streams that we do, which we do every Tuesday at 7 p.m. But also sometimes we do them off the cuff if there's breaking news. So you definitely don't want to miss that. So again, make sure that you subscribe by hitting subscribe and then pressing the bell. And if you can, of course, please do make this show possible by not only attending and liking and subscribing. And by the way, we're almost at 400,000 subscribers, which is pretty incredible. But do become Patreon supporters at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And at the $5 a month level, you get to have extended interviews, early access interviews, bonus content, bonus interviews. So it's a great thing to do. Give yourself that gift. And if you can't handle the $5 a month, then you can just do $1 a month and know that you are helping make this show possible, because we literally could not do the show without Patreon support. That's where everything comes from. So again, thanks again for coming, and we're very excited to get on with the show. And we're going to be talking during the second half of the show. We're going to be talking to Zeyad Kadur about his nephew, Mohammed Ibrahim. We're going to get a very important update about him. We, of course, spoke to Zeyad a couple weeks ago about Mohammed, who is the 16-year-old U.S. Citizen, literally languishing in an Israeli prison as we speak, and he's being mistreated. And we're going to be talking about the latest, and we're also going to be talking about what people can do to help get him out of prison. We're also going to be having an update about Richard Falk, who is a human rights luminary. He was the special rapporteur to Palestine, and he was recently detained. And I'm going to be giving you guys a sneak peek at an interview that I did with him when we were in Istanbul, because he was on the Gaza Tribunal jury. But the first thing that we're going to be doing is very exciting. We are going to be interviewing someone who has broken news about Jeffrey Epstein. And he is going to break the news today, because he is, it's like a big day for this guy, because he's coming on the Katie Halper Show for the first time. So a real historic moment. We are really excited to be joined by Matthew Petti, who is an assistant editor at Reason, a proud New Jersey native. He's reported for the BBC in both Persian and English, The Intercept, The Daily Beast, New Lines Magazine, Responsible Statecraft, Middle East Eye, and The National Interest, among other publications. And he covers U.S. national security policy and its interactions with American society and domestic politics. And he's going to be talking to us in great detail about his recent reporting on Jeffrey Epstein. So welcome to the show, Matthew.
Thanks for having me on. I'm really happy to be here.
Of course. Thanks for joining. Before we start talking about your recent reporting on Epstein, today was a very busy day when it comes to Epstein. What is the kind of breaking news, not that you reported on per se, but just the breaking news in terms of what's happening right now as we speak with Congress and Epstein and all that stuff?
I think the Senate has just passed, if I'm not wrong, I know the House passed it and sent to the Senate, if I can look that up right now, a bill to basically open up the Senate just passed it a few minutes ago, to open up the Department of Justice case file on Epstein comprehensively. So that goes to President Trump's desk. We'll see if he vetoes it, and if he vetoes it, we'll see if that goes back to Congress and if they can get a 2/3 override. I mean, as we'll talk about, I don't think the Department of Justice case file is the only one or necessarily the most interesting one, but this is a huge, huge step for disclosure, and I think is gonna. I don't know what we're gonna find in the file, but I suspect there's gonna be, even if we don't find the sort of bombshell or the smoking gun, there's gonna be a lot to work with there.
Right. Yes. Okay. So let's get into what you found. First of all, how did you start looking into this topic? Walk us through what got you interested, how you went around your reporting on this, and what things you discovered that others haven't.
So, actually, people say that I obtained Epstein's emails. I actually didn't obtain Epstein's emails. What happened was that former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak had his files leaked to the internet over something that had nothing to do with Epstein. It seemed to have just been sort of aimed at the Israeli state. And his emails were hacked and dumped to some skeevy Telegram groups and then collected by hacktivists and sort of put together into a package that was searchable and distributed to different journalists. The group that actually distributed is called DDoS Secrets. It's a sort of WikiLeaks spin-off, if you will, or successor. And yeah, I think a lot of people didn't bother looking into these files because it's like, okay, this guy's a former prime minister of Israel. The leaks are a decade old. He's sort of old news. But I realized, wait, he was also a business partner of Jeffrey Epstein. He had been to Jeffrey Epstein's house. So I searched in these emails, just like, I think one of the Epstein emails that's been public, like email addresses is publicly known. And I thought it was going to be, a few results, and it was 2,000 results. So I'm like, holy shit, I'm on to something
Yeah.
big. And it took a few months of reporting, and obviously we also had to verify that these were real. One of the big things that helped verify they were real is the birthday book, because these emails contain an invitation for Barak to contribute to the birthday book, which was not, at the time the emails were dumped to the internet, this was not a known thing, that like a thing that people knew existed. And then suddenly the Wall Street Journal reports this, hey, this book exists. So it's like, oh well, that would have been pretty hard to fake then in the emails, among other things. We verified it other ways too.
Right. And can you,
And
for people, sorry, keep going.
yeah, I mean, I can get into what was actually new in these emails.
Yeah, please do. But also for people who don't know, because a lot of people haven't been following the Epstein stuff, can you explain what this birthday book is?
Yeah, so there was a the one that actually got released, and we have pictures of it, was from 2003, but apparently there were multiple editions of this, where for Epstein's birthday, his assistant gathered letters from a bunch of his friends and family and stuff. Uh, you know, you sort of like a high school yearbook kind of thing. Here's your message for the birthday boy. Except a lot of these were like really salacious, raunchy things that sort of, especially because the first birthday book was 2003, which is before Epstein's first arrest. And it seemed pretty clear from some of the letters people were drawing for him that they knew that he was not only a sex pervert, but like a very predatory one. There was the letter from a friend who drew like Epstein giving out balloons to like little girls, and then it fast forward a few years and they're like massaging him in bikinis. There was a letter from Trump that talked about their wonderful little secret they had together with inside a drawing of a naked body. So I mean, it really Barack's letter, as far as I'm aware, did not have the raunchy sex references. It was very normal, sort of like, greetings, very polite, sort of like greetings
Yeah.
for someone's birthday. But just to be clear, but the book itself indicated that, yeah, people knew what was up before it sort of before Epstein faced legal repercussions. It was an open secret.
Right. So what are some of the most important things that you found?
Right. So it had already been known that that Barack had taken investment money from Epstein and had hung out with Epstein. But what I found was that the relationship was actually a lot deeper. That Barack and Epstein were actively seeking out business opportunities together, and also sort of dealing with they were trading very politically sensitive contacts. Uh, for one example, Epstein was or Barack had back-to-back meetings with Peter Thiel and Viktor Vekselberg, who is a Russian oligarch close to Putin, and and they were trying to get both of them to sort of invest into, or they were trying to do business with both of them on surveillance tech, which is also another very, very sensitive thing. And it seems that Epstein was introducing Barak to sort of potential investors, while Barak was introducing Epstein to people in the Israeli state who had worked on intelligence and surveillance. And the idea was to sort of monetize that. Dropsite News followed up on the same emails that I had looked at and actually took the reporting further. So all credit to them. Uh, and found that actually Barak was using some of these contacts as for sort of actual like diplomatic international political deals. Like this was a back channel to talk to Russia about Syria and the future of Syria. And of course, Epstein himself is not sitting in on these meetings, but he's a sort of fixer. This is a term I want to keep going back to, fixer, that was facilitating, I mean, right, like not just business deals, but serious political deals for Russia and Israel. And clearly he had contacts in the security services of both states.
Right. Yeah. It's really interesting because a lot of people dismiss these things, these stories that you're telling. And by the way, here's Ehud Barak, a more recent picture of him. So when he was president, I think he was prime minister. He was clean shaven. But here he is recently, just so when we're talking about him, people have a reference. But a lot of people, I think, dismiss this as conspiracy theory. And you actually and Dropsite have been doing real reporting on this and kind of laying out the connection. So before we talk more about Barak and what you've discovered related to Prince Andrew and also to Qatar, tell us about the relationship kind of more generally between Israel and Epstein.
Sure. I mean, as I said, Epstein was talking. So Barak was a former prime minister, also former general, head of military intelligence. So Epstein was that he seemed to have been. Also, just to be clear, these emails are this leak subset was from like 2013 through 2015. So this is long after Epstein's original sex trafficking scandal.
Right.
This is later stage Epstein. So I don't know if this is his only contact with the Israeli state. And also, this is, just Barak's emails. But
Right.
it seems that in this stage of his life, Barak was like Epstein's big Israeli contact. And that, again, he was cutting political deals. He was acting as a fixer for Barak. So the business that Epstein and Barak had together was called, Reporty. The company now has a successor company called Carbine, which is a kind of funny thing because Reporty is very mid 2010s. It's sort of like Crumble, but for surveillance. And Carbine is a very like chud coded Trump
Right.
era thing. But it was basically a company that was sort of supposed to modernize and automate 911 calling and tracking of 911 callers. But one of the board members is Pinchas Buchris, the former head of Unit 8200, which is the Israeli equivalent of the NSA.
Right.
So clearly this was sort of an into, not just sort of ambulance dispatching, but into a much bigger world of security stuff. And Buchris, I think, so when the Epstein's investment to Barak first was reported, this was after Epstein's second arrest, 2019, shortly before his death in custody. Buchris basically said, like, we had no idea the money was coming from Epstein. It was just coming from Barak. I had no idea who this Epstein guy was. I found in the emails, actually, Epstein did meet with Buchris. It's not clear exactly what the meeting was about because it was I think a Zoom or pre-Zoom. I think they were using Skype. I don't know, whatever they were using back in the way back in 2015. But yeah, I mean, Epstein did meet with the former head of the Israeli NSA. And Dropsite just came out with an article, I think a few minutes before we hopped on, about Epstein and Barak were trying to start another business that was for offensive cyber warfare, where they were bringing in yet more former Israeli cyber intelligence people. So this was a pretty tight business relationship. Epstein was clearly interested in what the Israeli state had to offer. I think a mystery is sort of how Epstein got in touch with Barak in the first place, and I think this will probably be an interesting telling thing. I think the account that Barak has given is that he met Epstein at another former prime minister, Shimon Peres's, birthday party along with Bill Clinton. So it'd be very interesting, and it seems like they were, I mean, based on this subset of leaked emails, Epstein was right off the bat talking to Barak and doing business and cutting deals. Um, so I mean, clearly there was some kind of pre-existing relationship, and I guess a big question is, was it just a relationship between Barak and Epstein? Were there other members of the state involved? Uh, One more thing, actually, that I just remembered, is that uh, pre-Abraham Accords, Epstein actually put Barak in touch with a very high-ranking or very prominent person in Dubai, Sultan bin Sulayem, who's the head of the port company, DP, and also Epstein describes him as the right hand of Maktoum, the Emirati royal ruling. No, not the royal family of the entire Emirates, the sort of ruling family of the city-state of Dubai.
Okay. Just a little.
But yeah, I mean, right, and it's not clear from the emails why. Maybe DropSite will find some source that answers this question. I kind of left it as an open question. Why Epstein introduced Barak to bin Sulayem, but they ended up meeting twice through Epstein, 2013, 2015. Again, this is before the Abraham Accords. This is before there are official relations between Israel and the Emirates. So this seems to be a sort of early diplomatic feeler between these two states.
Wow. Wow. So, something else that we know about a little bit. A lot of people talk about the, Epstein's pedophilia charges, the sexual abuse charges, his ties to the finance world. But what can you tell us about the surveillance industry, his ties to the surveillance industries, including ties to Palantir's Peter Thiel?
Yeah. Well, yes, Peter Thiel's another side of this. So Epstein ended up introducing, and this has been confirmed. This I reported based on the leaked emails, but this has now been confirmed from the published emails from the House Oversight Committee, which is what everyone's talking about, right? A few days ago, Congress released a big batch of Epstein's emails, but he had scheduled introductions between Barak and Thiel, and later ended up, and Barak describes the first meeting. Let me pull this up in my article. Right, so Barak is actually talking to a different business partner who we did not name in the article, and he does not mention that Epstein is involved in this, but he just says that he's going to go meet Peter Thiel. And then the business partner basically asks, like, can you tell me more about this? And Barak says, I don't know who or why. He asked to bring another person with him. I don't know who or why. I met him once in Davos 2 years ago. Probably he doesn't even recall it. I was told by the host of the dinner, meaning Epstein, that we will probably spend it talking just geopolitics. It's a first date. I think he's of huge potential to accelerate things by the sheer reputation he's got. No way it's a waste of time. And later on, Epstein tries to pitch this this 911 dispatch business to another Thiel business called Valar. And Valar ends up meeting with them and saying, and also it's very clear that Epstein has a pre-existing relationship with Valar, the Thiel company, because there's a very warm chat, and he can sort of just write, as Epstein writes these bad grammar emails, saying he wants a meeting, and then they're like, okay. But Valar says, we'd love to hear more about this in the future, but it's sort of a premature business idea. And then later, the yet another Thiel business, the Founders Fund, does end up putting money into this. So yeah, they seems to have successfully. I mean, I don't know, there's a 1, 2, 3 of how this happened, but it seems that Epstein did successfully, court the sort of Thiel business conglomerate to finance this company that's connected to Israeli intelligence via his relationship with Ehud Barak. And they were also looking at other sort of intelligence and surveillance related things. As I mentioned, Dropsite just came out with something a few minutes ago, so I didn't get a full chance to read what they wrote uh, about offensive cyber weapons. There was also another one that they discussed with this aforementioned Russian oligarch Vexelberg, who pitched sort of like AI for bringing together different streams of intelligence so you can track individual people. And it's also very interesting that there's a Russian-Israeli connection here, um, which is, not something that gets talked about much. And then also there was another business with, and this is actually one of the few people who responded to me when I reached out, because I think most people just saw Epstein in the subject line and were like, no, but this one this one business called Levitection, and now it's called Scannery, or it's the same people doing it. It was a former Iron Dome engineer who came up with a way to basically do like airport style body scans, but you don't go step through something. It's like a remote machine through the crowd. It's not clear how far along they got with the technology, but Barak pitched this to Epstein, and I think Epstein didn't end up going through with it. And when I asked the engineer who's doing this, again, the only person to respond for request for comment, he just said that he had no idea Epstein was sort of on the other end of this.
Wow. Does anything that stand out, by the way, anything you want us to show? Because I know you have a bunch of these emails in your pieces, but anything that you want us to show on the screen, let us know, because we can pull those up from any of your articles. Just let us know which one it's in, and while you're talking, we can find that.
God, I wouldn't even know where to start.
Okay, yeah, there's
I guess
so
we
many.
could pull up the Prince Andrew thing, because that one, the kidnapping has begun, because that one ended up being really significant.
Yeah, so that one is, let's see, it's so hard to keep track because you've done so many. Let's see, which one is that? Declassified documents. Detail the FBI surveillance of a libertarian sci-fi author? No.
No,
Epstein
it's here. I'll
role.
send this,
Okay,
send it to you now.
great. That's another one
So
that's a really good one.
it's the last image in this one.
In which one? Sorry.
I just sent it to you.
Okay. Private chat. Great. Okay, Brad, do you see that? Great, thank you.
Actually, you could also show the second to last one, because I think that was a pretty good second to last one. Is Epstein just telling Barak basically, I want to be involved in military intelligence stuff.
Okay, so here we go. So tell us where to go.
Yeah, I mean that's the Prince Andrew one, but you could
Okay.
also scroll up and no, sorry, not that one. Not that one. Yeah, that's
Okay,
a
great.
pretty interesting one.
Okay, so set this one up for us.
Yeah, so this is just Epstein telling Barak about his interests, and he says very clearly, like, uh, he wants to, that he's interested in intelligence. He says that corporations are looking for a new military-like perspective in management, that he's bringing old methods to a new industry, that he's very interested in Israel, particularly for its technological prowess, and yeah, that he's talking about. He's very interested in sort of data-driven intelligence. I mean, he's laying it out right here. He wants to be of use. I mean, there's many different ways you can read this, but I think a very suggestive one is this idea that he talks about bringing old methods to new industry. Like Epstein is someone who clearly has experience as like a fixer or wheeler dealer in this world. I'm skeptical of whether Epstein was actually like a paid agent of a specific state. I mean, I could be proven wrong, but I talked to a friend who's a historian of Cold War intelligence, and he said, yeah, this is such a familiar type of person who sort of deals with and benefits from many different states. And yeah, Israel was clearly one of them, and one that he was very close to. We can talk about the Prince Andrew stuff or the Emirati stuff if you'd like.
Sure. Is that in this one too? Which one is this?
The Emirati and stuff is in the newer article, or
Okay,
the
yeah.
Gulf Arab stuff. Okay, so the Prince Andrew stuff.
Here we go.
This email, I did not realize quite how significant it was going to be, because we just included it as sort of oh, look at this like other business venture that's sort of vaguely mentioned.
Right.
Uh,
So this is
but
from Epstein to Barak, right? To Ehud
yes, this is
Barak.
between
Okay.
Epstein and Barak.
Okay.
So Epstein, in his classical, borderline illiterate style, writes, "Wealthy Chinese looking for to start personnel protection co in Beijing. Kidnapping has begun." Which is just, I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm going to try to translate that, I think he means like there are wealthy Chinese people looking for protection services because someone got kidnapped. But then Barack asks, "Where'd you see it?" And then Jeffrey says, "Prince Andrew, who is now no longer Prince Andrew,
Right.
partly because of this
Well, he just
reporting."
says Andrew, actually, right? It's
Yes.
he says Andrew, and then Barak clarifies the prince. Yes. Yeah.
Well, now he's the Andrew formerly known as Prince,
Oh,
as they
that's
say.
good. Yeah. Right. So he was right. Maybe he knew that was going to happen. Yeah.
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 But yeah, so Prince Andrew had been, or just
Or,
Andrew,
yeah.
had been,
Andy.
yeah,
Download him to Andy. Yeah.
Mr. Windsor had
Yeah.
been, in recent years, he's been under fire, first of all, for his association with Epstein, and he was accused of participating in Epstein's sex abuse. Actually, one of the few people who we sort of have like a kind of uncontested, I mean, he denies it, but it's sort of, he didn't fight back in court or anything against the allegation. And when he tried to defend himself on BBC, he just made himself look very bad. But yeah, he was accused of participating in Epstein's sex abuse. Um, and so that had been floating around for a while. And then more recently, he's been accused of being recruited by like Chinese intelligence. And so this email, which I did not realize the significance of it, just brought those two things together. And so after I published the story, the Sunday Times of Britain actually reached out to me, said, "Hey, where'd you find that email? Do you have the uncensored original?" I said, "Yeah, sure. I'll walk you through how to get it." And they ended up publishing it, and it ended up being the first of a sort of setting off a chain reaction that led the British royal family to sort of disown Andrew, because, I mean, just the combination of Epstein and Chinese intelligence was not a good look. And this was also Andrew had claimed to have stopped talking to Epstein in
Right.
2010, and then this email shows like, wait a second, he's still sending Epstein business ideas. So that's not a good look.
Wow, yeah, that's really not a good look. By the way, I have to say this. I don't usually look at the comments, as Brad likes to say, it's like the sun, don't look right at them. Someone writes, "Katie, why do you only cover stories that make the Jewish people look bad? Are you a self-hating Jew?" To that, I will say, I make the Jews look good. For every Jeffrey Epstein, you have me, so you're welcome. And I'm sure you'll agree that people like Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal also make Jews look good, right? Because they're Jews, unlike Epstein. So thank you for playing the identity politics lane, Rick Johnson. Another one who I'm sure you'll love because you care about Jews looking good is Norman Finkelstein. He may not make Jews that you like look good, but anyway, I'll leave that for now. But yeah, I'll write a listicle. How about Elon Pape? You like Elon Pape? We got him. How about Holocaust survivors who are protesting the Gaza genocide? Because we interviewed those as well. So you have your pick. Yeah.
Well, something I just also want to add is that Israel's not the only state Epstein that this reporting shows Epstein's
There you go.
talking to. The Russian angle, again, is a pretty big one. I mean, he's talking to Vexelberg, he's talking to Belyakov, who's a Russian cabinet minister. Epstein is also, we'll get into his connection to Arab states if you care about balance on this. Right, he's talking to British royals, and Epstein, I don't really cover this, but Epstein is also in touch with two different, for a future and past CIA director. I think Leon Panetta, if I'm not wrong. Let me just make sure I'm not defaming Leon Panetta. And this one I know for sure, Bill Burns. So this is not just an Israel story, even
Right.
though the reason we know about this story is because of the hack of an Israeli prime minister.
Right.
Let me just make sure.
Sure.
Yeah, no, it was Panetta who had connection to who's connected to all this stuff.
Wow. There you go. I hope there are no Italian Americans in the chat who get offended by that. Yeah. He's not a pizza bagel, is he? I don't think so.
But yeah, we do want to talk about the other stuff then.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Where to go next? You want to go to the Qatar or Unit 8200? It's up to you.
Yeah, so Unit 8200, I think I mentioned, was Pinchas Bucharest and the
Yes.
Israeli cyber warfare people so that's, I think I've said sort of the bit
Yeah,
about that.
sure.
Yeah. But the Arab states,
Yes.
because it's not just Qatar, although that's the new one. That's really
Right. Yeah. Give us the
the
pan-Arab view.
yeah, so this is from the House Oversight email. Well, so from the Barak Epstein emails, we know that he was talking to the Emirates, and we also know about this connection from other sort of like his calendar. Wall Street Journal got his calendars and stuff. So this is sort of being fleshed out. But what's new is that from the House Oversight Committee emails is that Epstein was meeting with the Prime Minister of Qatar at least once. Because he apologized to some mysterious Qatari figure named Jabor, saying, sorry to cancel the scheduled meeting. I'll tell you when I'm next in Qatar. And he also has an email to himself, like a memo that said names for Steve Bannon or something. And this Qatari prime minister, I think it's Hamid bin Jassim ibn Jabor Athani. Although you know how Arab royals always have like 10 names, they're all variations. So
Right.
actually got him. We had to issue a correction because I got him
Uh-oh.
confused with a different Qatari royal. But we didn't have to change the title because they're both
Oh, great.
princes.
Right.
That is very unclear what kind of business Epstein was doing with Qatar or why, but I mean, he's meeting with a former prime minister, so this is a high level thing. There's another one. We don't know what country this person was from, but someone's asking favors on behalf of Kuwait, and then Epstein basically says that you should get in touch with. He had just been hanging out with Ronald Lauder, the heir to Estee Lauder. You should get in
Right.
touch with him, which is like also that's a new one. Like what the fuck? Like the Estee, but it turns out actually I looked into in the Ronald Lauder. He's president of the World Jewish Congress, and he's been involved in a lot of back channel diplomacy, both in the 90s and now between Israel and Syria. So I think Lauder was clearly, Epstein clearly wanted to sort of bring in Kuwait into this back channel. But also just, this is completely new and we have no other details about it other than these few emails. Epstein, this is also known, Epstein was close with Tom Barak. So not
Yeah.
Ehud Barak,
Right.
Tom Barak. Kind
Lebanese.
of confusing. Yes,
Lebanese.
Lebanese. So Tom Barak, I guess we should say E Barak and T Barak.
Sure, yeah. Or Tom. We could see Ehud and Tom. It's up to you, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Tom is
And Tom is the one
he's
who, like, yelled at people at a press conference, like, told them
he
not
called
to
them
act like
animals.
animals. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so Tom, he was a real estate guy who was tight with Trump for a long time. During the first Trump administration, he got actually in trouble for some kind of Qatari. I think he got acquitted. So I shouldn't say got. I don't want to be defamatory, but he was clearly had a relationship with the Emirates that was a little bit too tight for comfort, and the
Yeah.
Justice Department went after him. They didn't end up convicting him of a crime. But now in the second Trump administration, he's actually in government as not just as sort of a fundraiser and advisor to Trump, but as Trump's officially as ambassador to Turkey and special envoy to Syria, but as sort of general viceroy of the Eastern Mediterranean.
Right.
And that was the context in which Barack was in Lebanon, and he was getting he got flustered at a press conference and said, "Stop being so animalistic," which
Yeah.
caused a little bit of obviously offended the
Yeah.
Lebanese press corps. But yeah, he was tight with Trump. It was known that Trump introduced him to the Russian ambassador during, I think, 2017, which is like sort of odd that this was Epstein introduced Barack to the Russian ambassador, which is and also Thiel. And now in these new House emails, you have Epstein actually trying to get Thiel to meet with Barack and sort of bringing them together. And also just sort of Sultan bin Sulayem, the Emirati businessman / sort of operator we mentioned, Epstein also, he tells Epstein, I got an invitation from Tom Barrack to come to inauguration. Epstein's like, call me on the phone. It's a problem with a lot of these Epstein documents is so much of it is like references to meetings that happened in real life, so you don't really know. And this is sort of why we're probably not going to get like the smoking gun bombshell of what Epstein was, because so much of the stuff was not put in writing. So much of the writing was only arranging meetings to discuss this
Right.
stuff. And then there was one more thing with Epstein and Barak. Oh yes, so they're just making small talk, and then Epstein says to Barak, "Send me a photo of you with child, make me smile," which I think is probably just a reference, like send me a picture of you with your family. But that is a very unsettling
Yeah, you never want to hear
message
that.
to,
Yeah,
yeah,
from
from a child molester.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, it's a just a really weird, wide range of things. And then there's one, I'm probably the only person who wrote about the Arab connections, but this other email that got leaked, it's at the bottom of this article if you're looking for it.
yeah. Brad, you have that?
Yes, this one, the girls cave for. So he's talking to Kathy Rumler, who is former Obama administration official, and she apparently Epstein like um reached out to her to like put him in touch with Bill Gates or something, or possibly the Rothschild Bank. But anyways, like Epstein had basically they'd be started a conversation because Epstein was trying to get her to be a lawyer for people he was in touch with. And then they're just making small talk, and she says something like, "Girls don't have to deal with this crap," and Epstein says, "Girls, careful, I will renew an old habit," which is really like, it's like he was like paying teenagers to molest them, and all these people are basically treating it as a punchline or letting him treat it as a punchline, both before and after he was arrested. But then he goes on to just list, wait, bring it back up, because he goes on to list all of the people he was meeting during UN week. So it was Peter Thiel, Larry Summers, um, Bill Burns, the future CIA director, Gordon Brown, who's the former British Prime Minister, uh, Jagland, I forgot how to pronounce his first name, some long Scandinavian or weird Scandinavian name, but he was a former president of Norway who's also leading the Council of Europe. According to different emails, Epstein told Jagland, like, "Oh yeah, I told the Russians how to deal with Trump."
Wow.
The president of Mongolia, Dropsite had a very excellent thing about Epstein helping the Mongolian president get in touch with Barak for some, Israeli Mongolian deal. Hardeep Puri, who's an Indian minister, Boris, who's Bill Gates' science official, this mysterious guy named Jabber from Qatar, Sultan bin Sulayem of Dubai, Koslin, who's a researcher at Harvard, Leon Black, who's a banker in America, Woody Allen, who's the sort of actor and also, yeah. So,
Director, writer,
I mean, this is a sort of,
musician.
yeah, this is the sort of thing that Epstein was doing, right? He was a sort of, I think Murtaza at Dropsite described him as like a super networker or
Right.
something for the elites. I mean, so I think this is the other reason why I sort of push back on the idea that Epstein was necessarily a paid agent of one state. It seemed like he was really a fixer between different states and a little bit of a mercenary. And I mean, this is not to discount. Maybe we will get the smoking gun paper, after this Justice Department thing, that Epstein was like totally on the payroll of this intelligence service or that one. But it seems from what we have so far that he was really running a lot of different deals with a lot of different state actors, which is, I think, part of the reason why a lot of people don't want the Epstein files to come out.
Right.
And right, the $1 million question is like, were the sex crimes part of the influence trading or not? Right? Was this part of the leverage that Epstein was trading? And I think a lot of people talk with certainty, like a lot of people expect logically, yes, obviously, but we haven't really gotten any like example of that yet. So I think that's why it's worth continuing to dig. whether the answer is yes or no.
Right. So what do you think is the most explosive thing that you've discovered so far?
Oh, for sure, the like Russian-Israeli connection and the way that Epstein was putting Barak in touch with people close to Vladimir Putin. I mean, that's just I think this is probably at the time was the biggest evidence that Epstein was a sort of political operator in the covert world and not just some pervy old businessman.
Right. Well, you write about a lot of things, not just about Epstein. And I want to ask you about your recent reporting or analysis of you have a piece, Trump is quietly expanding the U.S. military role in Syria and Gaza. If you were watching that live, you were in luck because you got to see that whole chat with Matthew. And if you're watching this later and you want to see that whole chat where we talk about things like whether or not Epstein killed himself, the CIA, the relationship between the CIA and Epstein, the relationship between Trump and Epstein, you can do that at patreon.com/the Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/the Katie Halper Show. We are going to bring on our next guest, and I'm really so honored that he's returning to this show because he has such important things to talk about. We spoke to him a couple weeks ago about this very important story about his nephew. And our guest is Zeyad Kadur, who's talking to us again about his nephew, Mohammed Ibrahim, a 16-year-old American citizen who is in an Israeli prison as we speak. But he has some really important updates for us on this story. And of course, his other, tragically, his other nephew, Saif, was murdered by settlers and beaten up by settlers, and then the Israeli soldiers played a role in this, which I'm going to actually ask Zeyad to explain himself. But it was a kind of typical thing where we see settlers and the Israeli state acting hand in hand to commit crimes. So welcome back, Zeyad.
Hey, Katie, how are you?
Good, you. And so I'm so sorry for everything that you and your family have gone through and continue to go through.
Oh, thank you.
So where would you like to start? I know you have some really important big updates.
Mainly with Mohammed,
Yeah.
The 16-year-old now. He was 15 when he was detained.
Yeah.
There was a visit on Thursday from the U.S. Embassy at the prison, and their last visit was at the very end of September. I think it was September 30th.
Yeah.
And the staff member called his father and gave him some concerning news about his health, that it was
And
worse.
I'm sorry, Zeyad, sorry. Right, I realize I want to make sure that people who didn't watch that show just have like a 1-minute summary of what happened to Mohammed, because the last time you were here, of course, we were awaiting a trial, and we were hoping for good news.
Correct.
And we were hoping for the release of Mohammed. So can you just provide the audience with like a 1-minute summary of where we were before going on to the update?
Yeah, for those who don't know, Mohammed was here in Florida in January. He went to the West Bank late January. He was taken hostage by the IDF on February 16th in the middle of the night. 25 to 30 soldiers raided their home, came into the house. He was asleep. They blindfolded him, zip tied him, and that's the last day we saw Mohammed. Yesterday was 9 months. He hasn't seen his father, hasn't heard from, zero communication with his family, and vice versa. His family hasn't been able to talk to him, haven't been able to write him. During the last 9 months, there's been some concerns about his weight. At one point, he was down 1/3 of his total body weight. He contracted scabies, due to the lack of, soap and clean areas in the prison and the overcrowding and things like that. Recently, we understood that he was beaten into a confession for something he didn't do. And in September, they felt like he was doing better. End of September, they felt like his health was looking a little bit better. But just this past Thursday, we got an update that he didn't look too good. Weight loss, dark circles around his eyes, mentally just not focused in on, the staff visit from the embassy. We don't know. We know what he's going through physically, but, mentally, we have no idea. He turned 16 in the prison. At the same time, these are all alleged charges of somebody throwing a rock or being with a group of kids who threw a rock, which I think they're on record. There's over 380 kids in the prisons for the same charges. The conviction rate at that prison is 99.7%. So you have a military prosecutor, a military judge, and a military interrogator. At the same time, Mohammed was blindfolded and zip-tied. And when they took the blindfolds off of him, he was sitting in a room with military guards who are armed and wearing ski masks. So, the fear tactics involved, I think any 15-year-old or maybe any grown man after going what he went through would probably confess to whatever just to get off of, the torture. We see every day more people walking out of the prison looking half of their size. And, Muhammad's just our nephew, but how many other Muhammads are in the prison going through the same thing?
Yeah, it is really disturbing. And of course, we were hoping, you were hoping, we were all hoping that he would be released. And there's Saif, Muhammad's cousin, your other nephew, and there's Muhammad. And here are some other people, just for reference, other Americans who have been killed, American U.S. citizens who have been killed. Obviously, Muhammad is still alive, and we are working right now to have him free. But if you go back one more, Brett, just go back to that. So here are the various people, though, who the U.S. did nothing about. So Israel murdered them, and the U.S. has done literally nothing, starting as early as Rachel Corrie on the top left. And of course, Saif is on the top right. And again, so many condolences. Apologies is a ridiculous word. Condolences to you and your family, and to all the people who are in prisons right now who have been killed. Again, it doesn't matter that whether you're an American citizen or not. It just reveals the hypocrisy, right? Like, it's not like you're okay with Palestinian citizens being killed. The U.S. pretends to protect U.S. citizens. They don't pretend to care about Palestinians. So it's just another level of hypocrisy. And
we spent time with those families there in DC.
Tell us about,
So Rachel Corrie on the top, and that's Saif Musalet on the right-hand side from Tampa. Saif was the most recent one to be killed in Israel. That was in mid-July. He was only 20 years old. He was beaten to death. Rachel Corrie on the top left, 23 years ago. We were with her parents, Craig and Cindy Corrie. In the middle left is Aisha Noor. She's from Washington State. She's a Turkish American who was visiting the West Bank. She was shot by a sniper. Mid-September was her 1 year anniversary of her death, of her murder. On the very bottom left is Hafid. Tawfiq Abdul-Jabbar. His father, Hafid, was in DC with us. He was, I think, 17 at the time. And Muhammad's on the right. Muhammad is the one that's still alive, the one holding the camera. We learned from the families that you see in the picture there that accountability doesn't exist, and the impunity to the settlers or to the soldiers is just off the charts. So we're hoping Muhammad doesn't join, God forbid, that list that you see in that picture. But we spent time with their families and their the parents and the sister of Aisha Noor Osden, her husband Hamid. They flew in from Washington. We spent time with Craig and Cindy Corrie, who've been advocating for 23 years for justice. So we're not blind to the fact that we're probably not going to get much help. You're talking about a white American female who was ran over by a bulldozer and left in the dirt 23 years ago, and they're still looking for answers. And at the same time, we're talking about Muhammad, Saifullah, his first cousin. You have these two sisters, Maha and Muna, who are from Florida, and they're American citizens, and so are their kids. And you got one visiting the graveyard, to visit her son's grave. And you have her sister, praying that she's not going to be doing the same thing. They haven't seen their son for 9 months. They haven't heard anything except for bad news. His health is deteriorating. Government officials are not doing anything on both sides. And then we hear other Americans in other countries where there is zero diplomacy between those two countries. Russia, North Korea,
Right.
just recently Venezuela, right? But your so-called best friend and greatest ally in the Middle East and the only democracy in the Middle East is torturing this 15-year-old kid, who's 16 now, but have been zero updates from the United States side as far as him getting out or them trying to help. We have a lot of senators and congressmen trying to help. They submitted a congressional letter to Marco Rubio, to the White House, and to Mike Huckabee.
Right. So, right, 27 senators, right? So there were 20,
a mix of senators and congressmen. Yeah.
Okay. Signed a letter to Secretary of State Marco Rubio last month, urging an investigation to Mohammed's condition. But what is interesting is that the Israeli embassy in DC circulated a letter to select members of Congress and the Senate, and they defended their treatment and detention of Mohammed. But what's interesting is that none of those 27 who signed that letter to Rubio urging investigation got that letter. And some of the things that were said was that, quote, the defendant confessed to committing the offenses, and, quote, Mohammed, quote, is receiving the necessary medical care and is under continuous medical monitoring, including BMI follow-up, end quote. But this letter does not really tell the whole truth. Tell us your thoughts on this letter, what it says that isn't true, its omissions, etc.
So we've seen some reports on it, and there's some rumors that I guess the Israeli ambassador maybe cherry-picked who was going to receive it. We haven't heard it from any of the supporting politicians that were, I'll say human enough to want to help Mohammed.
Right.
I can't understand how, a U.S. citizen, a minor, how any father or mother in Congress or in the Senate doesn't want to help. Thankfully, there's 27 or 28 people who did, and there's probably a lot more who didn't get a chance to sign on because of the shutdown. But apparently there's some type of letter that circulated to certain offices, and we heard bits and pieces, but a lot of it is just misinformation, pivoting from the truth, maybe a head start for some bad media coming out, kind of give his friendlies some type of leverage on, if you hear this is the response,
Right.
But from what we heard, we have evidence and proof that a lot of it is bullshit.
Right. Wow. Yeah. It seems like this campaign by Israel comes in the wake of this arrest beginning to weigh more heavily on politicians as a result of the push to free Mohammed. So are there any signs that this is making a difference? I mean, what kind of words of encouragement do you want to give to people?
As a family, I could speak on it as his uncle, as his mom and dad, the parents, they want to come here and do more, but they don't want to leave their son in a dungeon, and travel overseas and come to the States and ask people to do their jobs. We're not, we have faith, we ask God for help and mercy. The only thing we're asking from both governments is, do their job, due process, which, like I said, 99.7 conviction rate. There's no due process there.
Right.
A lot of humanitarian organizations, a lot of people have been helping us out the most, more than the government. CARE, AMP, IMEU, CCR, Code Pink, Jewish Voices for Peace, the Veterans for Peace have been very, very active. They've been helping a lot, but that's kind of our only method is other people who still have a heart and want to, help this kid come home. When your hands are tied, that's all you have, is you do what you can. This show right now that we're on, social media. Some big television networks have reached out and done certain segments, CNN, and I think today maybe NBC did something overseas with the father. But the Democrats are weak right now in this administration, especially. But we don't know if President Trump directly actually knows or not. We know Marco Rubio does. He messed up in an interview in Tel Aviv. He couldn't hear a question, and they asked him about a Palestinian prisoner that the U.S. was thinking about asking for his release, and he couldn't hear the reporter. And he asked the reporter, can you repeat it? And he repeated it, and he said, "Oh, you mean the American? Oh, well, we're working with that through our embassy and our consular services." And then the guy repeated the question a third time, and he said, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about that."
Right.
So so he received the congressional letter. He mentioned it in an interview while he was in Israel. And, a good point to point out is he received the letter a day or two before traveling to Israel. So, while he's there, you drive by the prison that kid is in a couple of times. You could have stopped by and checked. You could put in a good word. They're a big ally, right? And same thing though with Ambassador Huckabee.
Yeah, this is interesting. So I'll get back. There are a bunch of lies, by the way, that letter tells, which we can debunk. Do you want to go over that first, or do you want to go over what Mike Huckabee said? Because we actually have a tweet from Huckabee.
Yeah, you could start with that, and then I'm not familiar with too much of the literature of the letter, so I'm interested.
Okay, yeah,
hearing a lot of that.
Sure. So let's take a look at what Mike Huckabee said in response to the murder of your nephew, Saif. "I have asked Israel to aggressively investigate the murder of Saif Musalla, an American citizen who was visiting family in Sinjil when he was beaten to death. There must be accountability for this criminal and terrorist act. Saif was just 20 years old." So tell us again about what happened, who participated in it, and then what is your response to Huckabee's comment?
So Saif was overseas. He was supposed to be back here in late July. His flight got canceled, so he had to do a different booking to a different country. He had to go through the Jordan side. I think it was in the middle of the Iran-Israeli conflict. So his flight got canceled out of Israel. His father had switched places with him and came to Tampa to cover the ice cream shop for him that they owned. So Saif was at home overseas with his mom, his little brother, the sister, and then there's his baby brother. So they're a family of 4 kids. He heard that there were settlers cutting down trees, burning down little farmhouses, and they have land in that area. His dad, who's a citizen, also an American citizen, has a piece of land there. So they went out to go check on his father's plot, and apparently there were settlers hiding in the hills, and he was ambushed. And they measured that it was about 6 to 7 kilos that he was running away trying to escape. Unfortunately, they got a hold of him, and for the witnesses who were there, there's just 9 to 11 people who attacked him or jumped him. He was beaten to death. They thought he was dead. His little brother made it to him. His brother climbed 2 hillsides down in the valley and came back in and got to him. But he's not a doctor. He's not a medic. He was just his little brother. And at the same time, he was still breathing. The ambulance was blocked by the IDF on the other side of the mountain for 2.5 hours, saying that they weren't permitted to enter that area. 2.5 hours later, the ambulance was able to get through. The ambulance got attacked. The windshield got busted out. I think the driver had a minor injury. Saif took his last breath 5 minutes before they were able to get him on the stretcher. So, sorry. So the family, you got this kid who's killed at 20 years old, beaten to death, not allowed to get in an ambulance, and buried. And very same people who still did it are still sitting there occupying that illegal area. That's Palestinian Authority area, not Israeli settlers. But you come and pick up a 15-year-old American who you're saying that was next to somebody throwing a rock. You know, make it make sense. If, you know, how can you kill somebody and still be there? You know, and then you got these, you know, you got Bin Fear and Smoltritz, you know, rewarding these settlers and cheering them on. But a 15-year-old petite kid from Florida is rotting away in a prison for 9 months. So Mike Huckabee does do that tweet. I am familiar with that tweet that you just showed us. And they call the family and say, you know, we're going to stop by the village and pay our condolences. And at the time, the picture that you showed of the other Americans, the kid on the bottom left, Tawfiq Abdul-Jabbar, his father, you know, was there too. So Huckabee visited the one in the glasses on the bottom left, you know, Allah yarhamah. His father, Tawfiq, was there too. So Mike Huckabee sat with 3 fathers in July, and 2 of them had already buried their American kids. 1 2 days, you know, or 3 days prior, I guess, or a week, and 1 a year before, you know, and they explained to him that, you know, our kids are gone. No one's been held accountable. But this guy's son has been in the prison for 5 months now, and you guys can still save him. And, you know, if this kid can come home to his family, you know, maybe us 2 fathers who had to bury our kids, you know, feel a little bit better that our son didn't die in vain if we're able to help another American Palestinian kid who's innocent. You know, the very next day he's tweeting stuff about, you know, there is no Palestine and there is this and that. So we have a saying, you know, and he kind of fits the saying overseas, you know, you murder somebody and then you come to the funeral and ask if you can carry the casket. And that's how we're taking it right now. You know, you egg them on one side, and then you come pay your condolences on, you know, one day, and then you disappear. The last contact we had was July. You know, now we're in November. Mohammed's been there for 9 months, and he can't say he doesn't know. He received a congressional letter from, you know, 27, 28 different senators and congressmen, right?
Right. So, and
Marco Rubio mentioned it in the interview while he was in Israel. So, you know, we're kind of like no man's land, and the double standard, you know, Katie, you're well aware. You know, Mohammed or Saif or Tawfiq, they're American by passport. In the eyes of our government, they're not American enough.
Right. It's awful.
It's loud and clear message.
Could you walk us through the timeline provided to your family by the Israeli prison services themselves of Mohammed's medical evaluations while detained and what it reveals? We have
I'd also like your listeners and viewers to know something. You know, everything that you're mentioning, you know, we haven't seen Mohammed or been able to talk to him or visit him. So every statement or every document, those are recorded through emails, text messages. Those are from the 2 governments, the Israelis and the American government. So you know, there's no hearsay in this. There's no type of rumors. We're talking about facts that have been given to us through the U.S. Embassy, and the U.S. Embassy is part of the State Department, right? And whatever they receive from the Israeli side is from the prosecution's office or from the Israeli prison services, right? So, you know, that's where all this information is coming from. This is all documented, official stuff from both governments.
Right.
So I don't know what document you want to show, but if I know
the timeline. Yeah, here it is. Okay.
Oh yeah, I know what that one is. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you just set this one up? Yeah.
Yeah, dear Mr. Ibrahim, that's Mohammed's father. This was relayed in an email from the U.S. Embassy, Jerusalem, and the Council's office in Tel Aviv. That's a briefing from what they call IPS, which is the Israeli Prison Service. So it has his name, his ID number, his date of entry, which is very, very interesting if people really want to look at this. So number 2 shows you the date of entry, and it's February 16th, right? And if you see number 3, April 22nd, he was identified as having low BMI. So in 2 months and 6 days, he already had lost a lot of weight, right? And they said that he was placed under close medical supervision. The weight was monitored and recorded. So if it was monitored and recorded, where is it, right? Because above they say there was no irregularities were noted, right, on number 2. So why did you weigh him and record it, but not put it in the statement? But more interesting, if you look at number 2 to number 4, February 16th to July 17th, right? That's 5 months and 1 day, if my math is right, between those 2 dates. So there's 2 updates, March 10th and April 22nd, in 5 months and 1 day, right? Look at July 17th to August 10th. Less than 4 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look how many updates there are. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So it's interesting that if he was under supervision for low BMI on April 22nd, where's the rest of April, March, April, May, and June updates? Correct?
Right.
And I'm not an investigator. I'm just the uncle that kind of read this a couple of times. And then why is there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 updates in less than 4 weeks? I'll tell you why. Because they're not going to tell us why. July 17th is after Saif was killed. His first cousin, an American, their moms are sisters. And CNN came and did a report about it. And CNN came to the funeral. And they also went to go visit the location where he was murdered. And a reporter and his cameraman barely made it out of there alive. 48 hours after an American was killed, an American reporter who does Israeli reporting for CNN, I think his name is Jeremy Diamond, was attacked by the same settlers who killed Saif. They were able to bust out the windshield, or the back window of the car, I'm sorry, and they barely made it out. Just 2 days after an American was killed, 3 more were almost killed, who were there as press, right? So all of a sudden, if you look at this article, at this sheet that you're looking at, there's some big concern for Mohammed for some reason between July 17th to August 10th. But for the first 5 months and change, so, low BMI, he's under supervision. So what does that mean? Does that mean he's getting more food? Is he getting some type of special treatment? And what about the scabies? The scabies was reported from the embassy. They said that he had scabies on his leg. A month later, his entire body was covered with scabies. But when it was just on his leg, the embassy requested that he get medication. So if he got medication, how did it spread? Right? Just like I said, this is not news to us. This is just another Tuesday. We've been going through this for 9 months. Our family's been going through enough already. And we're just 2 drops in the ocean. Look what every Palestinian civilian's been going through for the last 77 years. But
Wow. Yeah. It's so awful. And I'm so sorry. It's just so awful that you have to go through this, that Mohammed has to go through this, that Mohammed's parents have to go through this. And yeah, I mean, they're just lying through their teeth, obviously. And the US government is not on its own going to be doing anything about it. And, some contradictions that I just want to point out based on that letter. that the Israeli embassy circulated. So let's see. The letter said that Mohammed confessed, but he himself also gave a sworn affidavit saying, quote, the interrogator threatened that if I did not comply, he would instruct the soldiers to beat me. Out of sheer fear, I ultimately confessed, right? Okay, that's one thing. Then they said that they checked his BMI regularly, but leave out that Israeli medical authorities noted his BMI had halved by April 22nd. So that was nearly 7 months ago. And Mohammed, in the same affidavit, noted the conditions in his new prison, Ofer, are even worse in terms of food. And so Mohammed said, the meals we receive are extremely insufficient. For breakfast, we are served just 3 tiny pieces of bread, along with a mere spoonful of labneh. At lunch, our portion is minimal, consisting of only half a small cup of undercooked dry rice, a single sausage, and 3 small pieces of bread. Dinner is not provided, and we receive no fruit whatsoever. Occasionally, we might get a small cucumber and a tiny tomato with some meals, but this is not guaranteed. There are no desserts of any kind. We only receive a small spoonful of jam every 2 or 3 days. Sometimes we are offered only light tea, which tastes more like hot water and is served without sugar. The embassy letter also, end quote. That's the end of the quote. Okay. So the embassy letter also said Mohammed's father was in the room, but according to journalist Jasper Nathaniel, that isn't true. And Mohammed also said that when he motioned to his dad to say hi, who was present through Zoom, he was beaten and hit.
Okay, so yeah, so you're referring to the ambassadors, not the embassy, right? The Israeli embassy in DC.
Yeah.
So yeah, so just this past week, the father was able to see him. He was in a different room. The father was in a courtroom with the judge, the lawyer, the prosecutor, and maybe some type of bailiff, like military bailiff, was in there. And Mohammed was in a different room with a camera on him. And I think it's his first time seeing his dad in 9 months. So, any 15-year-old, 16-year-old, you could be a grown man. If you haven't seen your mom or dad, for 9 months, haven't heard their voice, not even a picture. And God knows if Zahram even recognized his son by the way he looked at the time. I think the kid, first time in 9 months seeing a familiar face, raised his hand, either to wave or to say, "Hey, Dad, I'm here." And some punk, holding an M16 and a uniform, who kid who's sick and a featherweight right now, smacks his arm down and gets in his face and says something to him. And that was the first interaction that his dad had with his son in 9 months. So, the abuse, that's not news to anybody, right? But what needs to be pointed out, if that's what happened in front of the prosecutor, the lawyer, the father, and the judge, you don't need to use your imagination to figure out what happens when the cameras are off, right?
Right.
And we're hearing about, this notorious, way of torture that, of what they're doing to people. And, we got like a really light sample of it just, in front of a judge. So that was really worrying the dad, and he said, man, he said, you're helpless. You can't do nothing about it. If you say something, you end up in the cell, across the hall from him or something. And then I just told you about the BMI, just Thursday, the U.S. Embassy staff member, picked up the phone and told the father, he said, I have to be honest with you, your son doesn't look good. I saw him 45 days ago. He's in bad shape. And he even updated the State Department and let him know that that file is attainable by members of Congress and the Senate through some type of program they have, Overseas Counselor Services. I think they call it OCS. And then he felt the need or the urgency to do a few other things. So he reported back to the IPS, the Israeli Prison Services. He wrote a letter to Prime Minister Netanyahu's office. And he also sent the same report out to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Israel. So, the staff member, he's really trying to do what he can, the one from the embassy, but he's also kind of showing us that he doesn't have the support or the backup he needs to really help Mohammed. And that goes back to the two previous names, I guess, that we mentioned, Mike Huckabee and Marco Rubio.
Right. Yeah, it's really awful. I mean, they obviously have no shame, so that we have to use as much political pressure as possible. Where can people find out more about how to demand the freedom for Mohammed?
There's hundreds of call to actions with the phone numbers of and petitions that there's already a template there that you can just fill out. Very simple. There's emails to the State Department, to the U.S. Embassy, to the Israeli Ambassador's Office. CARE National has it on their website. They have the links there. IMEU has it. AMP has it on their website. I think CCR updated theirs. I think I think today Angie Nixon, or last night Angie Nixon from Florida. I think she's from Jacksonville. She made a public statement about Mohammed. Maxwell Frost also recently did another update supporting Mohammed, and plus the other 28, 29, signatures that were on that list. So you could just Google Free Mohammed and you'll see, hundreds of links and call to actions. At the same time, it's been 9 months, and we saw, from Rachel Corrie's case, 23 years. So the call to action is the least you can do. But if you can pick up the phone and really call Marco Rubio, if you can reach out to Mike Huckabee, and if anybody has any emails or ways of contacting the administration at the White House, this is just beyond ridiculous now.
Yeah.
Kate, it's my second time on your show in maybe 3-4 weeks. We went on 2 delegations to DC. The bigger shame and the bigger loss would be coming back on the show and telling you about who Mohammed used to be. Speaking to you about the way we speak about Saif, Aisha Noor, Rachel Corrie, Tawfiq Abdul-Jabbar, we could still have a chance to save Mohammed. But after the last update we have from the embassy, him going to a hospital and getting checked out by a third party seems like it's impossible right now for us to do as the family or even the embassy. So it's got to start here. Put him at the same level of concern as the WNBA player in Russia, as Amanda Knox in Italy, as the guy in North Korea. All these countries we have no diplomacy with whatsoever.
Right.
But even in Venezuela, I think 5 or 6 Americans were saved and brought home, and none of those names that I mentioned were minors or children. They were all adults charged with crimes. The smallest crime is standing next to somebody throwing a rock. On the flip side, if you guys have this justice system that everybody's held accountable, nobody's above the law, then go get the 10 people that killed the 20-year-old American Saifullah. Go get the drivers of the bulldozer who ran over an American girl by the name of Rachel Corrie 23 years ago. Don't use our son or our nephews or these other minors as pawns in your games of, whatever you want to call it. You guys are just talking about the Epstein files and the involvement of other countries and this and that. We've never went down that route. Yes, I'm Palestinian. This may look like a scar, but it's everything. We're proud of where we're from. At the same time, we've always approached this as a humanitarian aspect. We never talked about borders. We never talked about religion. We never talked about anything else. We're just talking about this child that deserves to be home with his mom and dad, just like anybody else's kids. So we expect them to do their jobs. We expect to, they should know how time sensitive it is. And 9 months is 9 months too long.
Yeah, it's awful. And also, anyone watching this, any politicians or any individuals who claim to be America first, this is not what America first looks like. Being the kind of pawn of Israel and letting Israel kidnap and torture your citizens. You're pretending, or you're claiming, Marco Rubio, Mike Huckabee, Donald Trump, you're claiming that you care about America first. America first is not what this looks like. And if you are people who voted for Trump, if you like Rubio, if you like Huckabee, if you like the idea of America first, you should really be up in arms and calling them and complaining, protesting, because this is not what that looks like.
Yeah, and if they're not American first, they can be human first.
Yeah, that's
You
what I
know?
mean. Yeah, I'm just trying to. I'm just talking to them. Of course.
Yeah, they can. There's many reasons why you don't want to help.
Yeah.
It's just a kid, and we've got so much support from everybody except for our government.
Yeah.
And
shameful.
And we're not giving up. And we thank you guys for having us on and getting the word out to, maybe the right person will hear this and know somebody that can help. Right now we're asking for medical evaluation outside of the prison, and we're asking him to come home. We've been asking that for 9 months. We're also asking for our Florida reps, who have been very silent. Our senator, our governor. They're the ones who should stand up and do something. Marco Rubio's from Florida. He's also from an immigrant family, right? He's also from a country that wasn't so fair that his family ran away from. So, our DNA or our religion, shouldn't be the issue when it comes to anything, but especially the 16-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And shame on them, shame on them for us to be talking about this for 9 months. It's disgusting.
Yeah. He was 15. Now he's 16. We showed videos and photos. We can cut those back in later when we make a clip of this, because he's a beautiful soul, and you can tell, and it's really moving to watch him holding his relatives, his little toddlers in your family. So again, my condolences, my we will do everything we can here to make sure that as many people know about this, and we'll put all the links in and all the phone numbers.
Thank you, Katie. We appreciate that. From the uncle and on the behalf of his mom and dad, thank you guys. It means a lot to us that there's still, people that, that have no dog in this fight, and you guys are doing so much. We appreciate it.
Well, we all have dogs in this fight, a dog in the fight.
Yeah.
If the fight is like for humanity, which really is what this is.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And please give a special greetings and support to his parents.
Always. I let them know every day what you guys are doing, and they respect and appreciate it.
Great. Well, thank you again so much. And let us know, of course, if there's anything else that you need from us in terms of, publicizing this and reaching out to people.
For sure, Katie. I'll be in touch, and hopefully the next time we talk, we can give you guys some good news.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Z.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Okay. Well, guys, we're going to definitely put in all those links. Brad, right? You'll get those links from Z. You have his contact info. By the end of the night, we will obviously have all of those in there. And obviously none of that is going to be paywalled, right? We're going to send that to as many people as possible. Shame on Rubio, exactly. Free Mohammed Ibrahim, exactly. And we will not stop talking about this, because this is absolutely disgusting. And in terms of dogs in the fight, right? Like, again, I was saying, it's anyone who cares about humanity needs to care about this. But I also have to say that, like, as a Jew, I won't let Israel, the government of Israel, and the politicians who support Israel's crimes hide behind, ideas of Jewish safety and the Holocaust in order to genocide people and in order to, kidnap and torture and kill American citizens, any citizens, but especially American citizens. So we all have skin in the game. We all have a dog in this fight in some way or another, whether you're because you just care about human beings. If you're someone who voted for Trump and says you're an American firster, you don't have to be a Palestinian to see why this is so urgent. We are going to do one more short segment. This is actually pretty interesting. We have a short segment that we're going to show. So people may remember that I was in Istanbul. I was giving testimony on media bias at the Gaza Tribunal held in Istanbul. And that was organized by people including Craig McIver and Noura Erakat, who've been on the show, both human rights lawyers and scholars. And the juror, the presiding juror was Richard Falk, who is a former UN Special Rapporteur who's investigated Israel's crimes before. And he again was at, I had the pleasure and good fortune of getting to see him, hear him speak, but also do a short interview with him. And I was going to release it. And we'll be releasing some of these interviews that I did in Istanbul. But this is relevant because right now there's a news story because Richard and his wife, who is herself a scholar, they were detained and questioned for multiple hours at Toronto Pearson International Airport Thursday, November 13th. They were reportedly questioned about his work regarding Israel, criticism of the Canadian government's complicity in the genocide, and his forthcoming participation in the Palestine Tribunal on Canadian responsibility. And so I actually have, let's see, we have I want to show a headline about this story. Where's the article? Where's that article? Sorry about this. 1 second. 1 second. I want to show sorry about this, guys.
Is this what you were talking about or you're looking for, Katie?
No, I was going to surprise that. There's a
Okay.
regular, sorry, is there a link? Hold on a second. If you just put literally Richard Falk, Canada. Here, we can just do this one. Need a link to this. Okay. Here. Okay. No, that's not the right link. Okay. Calls for answers grow over Canada's interrogation of Israel critic. 1 second. Okay. Calls for answers grow over Canada's interrogation of Israel critic. Ministry of Public Safety says it is seeking more details about questioning of scholar Richard Falk at Toronto Airport. Canadian human rights activists are demanding answers from their government after a former United Nations Special Rapporteur who investigated Israeli abuses against Palestinians was interrogated at the Canadian border on national security grounds. Richard Falk, 95, was stopped at Toronto Pearson International Airport on Thursday and questioned for several hours. He said a security official told him that Canada had concerns that he and his wife, fellow legal scholar Hilal Elver, pose a danger to the national security of Canada. So I met with, I again, as I said, I was lucky enough to meet Hilal Elver and Richard Falk. Brad, can you show a photo of me and these security threats?
So those are the alleged security threats here.
Connected by
I think there's one other.
Yeah.
My
so
gosh.
yeah, really scary people. Yeah. So without any further ado, we have a little bit of this interview that I did with this security threat, Richard Falk. And then we're going to be posting the rest of it this week on Patreon. We're also going to be posting the part of the Matthew Petti interview on Epstein on Patreon. So we're going to play this snippet of this really important interview with this really important person. And then we will say goodbye and we will have some updates for you. So let's take a look at this and I will see you right after we play this. So don't go anywhere. So thank you so much for speaking to me.
Glad to do it. Happy we had the opportunity.
When did you start when did you start breaking that taboo that says you can't make any comparisons between Nazi Germany and Israel?
I wrote an ill-advised article in 2007 where I was very critical of the way that Israel was administering the Holocaust, administering the occupied territories, and as a kind of what I intended to be sort of a wake-up call, I gave it the title of Slouching Toward a Holocaust. And that article was picked up by Zionists, and I was attacked quite a bit. And when I was appointed as special rapporteur, much to my surprise, the U.S. ambassador to the UN said that my appointment shows what's wrong with the UN, and that he called me a fruitcake, which is kind of ironic now that he's in trouble. That was Bolton. John Bolton was the ambassador at that time. So it's a kind of subtle revenge.
And I mean, in some ways, though, I would say maybe it was ill-advised on a professional careerist level, but I would say you were kind of ahead of the curve. While obviously it's not a one-to-one comparison, there are, I think, parallels between what the Nazis did and what the Israelis are doing. What do you think those are, to the extent that you do think there are?
Yes, I think there are parallels. There are, of course, very important differences, and the setting is very different, and the alignment of countries is significantly different. I mean, the representative liberal democracies of the West opposed ideologically the Nazi regime and the racism of it, but they didn't do much. I mean, they let it happen until Germany attacked Soviet Union and Japan attacked the U.S. They didn't try to alter the regime in Germany. And in relation to Israel, there is a very strong kind of civilizational connection, but negatively through the Holocaust, but also affirmatively through the notion of the West against Islam. So Israel being the kind of doing the dirty work of the West. And you might remember Samuel Huntington's prophecy after the Cold War that there would be an encounter on the fault lines between Islam and the West, particularly in the Middle East, because of the energy reserves and the strategic situation with respect to trade and Suez Canal and so on. I gave a Said lecture in Cairo, and I called what happened the second coming of Samuel Huntington, because it was, of course, long after his original article, which was in 1992.
Right. Let's see what time. I don't want to keep you too long. I'll just ask about what you think the parallels are and how you think Israel weaponizes the Holocaust.
Well, they weaponized the Holocaust by weaponizing anti-Semitism and calling people that criticize Israel who are not the slightest bit anti-Jewish in their existential life or in their ideological outlook as anti-Semites. And they do that, in my view, deliberately. It's not an innocent mistake. They tried to destroy, with some success, Jeremy Corbyn as one prominent example. There's a book by Asa Winstanley that sort of depicts the relationship between Israel's state propaganda machine and these defamatory attacks. I was particularly attacked when I was special rapporteur by UN Watch, the NGO in Geneva, and they attacked me as a self-hating Jew. And, you know, I tried my best to ignore it, because if you contest it, it gives it more currency, and most people don't know. They don't know which side is valid, or they believe that where there's smoke, there's fire, and so on. And I think I successfully did. And then they happily more or less ignored me after my term was up in 2014. But Francesca hasn't had such good luck, even though she isn't a self-hating, even Italian.
But she can be called an anti-Semite, which is more powerful than some little Jew. That's their way.
I had the special additional feature that made me a prime target. But and for instance, Michael Link, who came after me, he wasn't so sharply attacked. And so in some of the writing on Francesca, they compare her to me because we were both given, death threats and other kinds of.
And of course, he's speaking about Francesca Albanese, who has been sanctioned. And so that is the great Richard Falk, the human rights scholar who I was lucky enough to meet in Istanbul at the Gaza Tribunal. And again, absolutely absurdly, he has been, he and his wife, who is herself a scholar, Hillel Elver, were detained and questioned. Absolutely absurd. And it was his 95th birthday, the day of his 95th birthday. But in case you didn't think that was outrageous enough, we have another outrage to show you. This one is brought to us by the very wonderful Honest Reporting, which is an ironically named, basically hate group. I would say they've gone after me, and they are rabid Zionists who hate Palestinians. They hate people who defend Palestinians, like Richard Falk, and they also hate this CBC journalist, because Richard Falk, described by CBC News as prominent legal scholar, and that is the awful CBC journalist who committed the crime of calling him a prominent legal scholar, which is hilarious, because honestly, like, no matter what you think about him, sorry guys, he's a prominent legal scholar. Like, you may not like him, but this is really pathetic that this is the kind of outrage that they're trying to stoke. And yeah, this is a big part when there is anti-Semitism and it doesn't get taken seriously. It's in large part thanks to people like Honest Reporting. So yeah, anyway, that has been our show. And of course, don't go anywhere, because I do have an announcement. But just to remind people, Join the Patreon at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show to see the full interview with Richard, early release, to see the full interview with Matthew Petti if you've missed it, and just to support the show. And also, of course, please do like the stream and subscribe if you haven't already. And now I have actually a really terrible announcement to make. I have some really sad news. People who have watched this show for a while will know, of course, about who Leslie Lee is. He was a writer, podcaster, critic, son, husband, brother, uncle, and all around extremely sweet, smart, fun, and funny guy. I was blessed to have met him when he did this took part in a really funny hashtag on Twitter, which was Bernie Made Me White, where people were joking about how, Bernie supporters were being misrepresented as a bunch of white dudes and white bros. And so Leslie's tweet at the time was, ever since hashtag Bernie Made Me White, I've been binge watching Friends. We are going to be doing a special broadcast about Leslie, but he did tragically, he left us way too early. He passed away on November 10th at the age of 43. In addition to being a son, brother, uncle, friend, husband, he was also a dog and cat dad, a writer, a teacher, a podcaster. Again, he was a co-host on this very show many times. I was so appreciative of that. And he was the host of Struggle Session, which he used to co-host with Jack Allison. I have a couple of photos to show, but first I just wanted to say that both his family and his spouse sent me some of their favorite photos. And his family said that they, quote, "Thank everyone for their love and support during this difficult time. Please continue to stay safe and wear your mask. Leslie's last tweet says it all. Please start taking COVID seriously before more people have to suffer and die." Brad, if you could, when you get a chance, grab that tweet. I did not grab that tweet. So Leslie also had long COVID, and he was a very outspoken advocate for looking into taking seriously long COVID and masking. So I'm just going to show some of photos of Leslie. Brad, can I control it here or no? I can't, right? I can't play through it. Brad, you can come on because you also
No, but I can bring that on. And I was just preparing that while you were speaking, Katie. What was the tweet you wanted me to?
Oh, his pinned tweet. It's his pinned tweet.
Okay. All right. I'll get that ready.
Okay, great. So here, by the way, is when I first met Leslie, and again, we will have more, we'll do a whole special episode on Leslie, but here's where we first met. This was at the Brooklyn Commons. We met online over the Bernie Made Me White hashtag, and I invited him to come on to a show, and he was living in Japan at that time, but he was moving back to the States right around that time. So he came on the show, and it was great. We had like a whole Bernie Bros show. So that's me and Leslie in 2016. That is me and Leslie later on when we did a live show together. So he and I and Jack Allison, so they together were Struggle Session, did a show, and Jamie Peck was taking part in it as well. So that's Leslie and me. Here during that same, no, this was an earlier trip, I guess. Yeah, another time that he was in town. As you can see, so this is my mom and Leslie and Bodie. So as I wrote in I think this must have been on Instagram. So mutual fans, Nora, my mom Eisenberg, Bodie Pooch Pup, and Leslie Lee, see us all minus Bodie and my mom. No, my mom was at the show too, at Littlefields, and here's that show. So here's Leslie, here's Jack, here's me, here's Jamie Peck, and we were making fun of Meghan McCain. Here's another time that Leslie visited. This is Gabe Pacheco, someone who also used to do co-hosting for the Katie Halper Show. That's Leslie, that's me, that's Kate Willett, who's been on the show, and she has been on at the same time as Leslie Lee. Same trip, obviously, same time. Here is Gabe, Leslie, and YB, or Kelly, Leslie's spouse, and Kate Willett. Another of Leslie and YB. Then here is Jamie and Leslie, and you can see how happy they are together. And that's a great smile, great photo of Leslie. And then here are some photos of Leslie and I co-hosting. This was a great one where we had on Roger Waters and Steven Donziger. Also, my friend's adorable daughter came by and sat on my lap and spoke to them. So when we do our special stream for Leslie, we'll show that. Here is me and Leslie and Norman Finkelstein. Me and Leslie and Rania. And I know Leslie was a big fan of Rania, and Rania was a big fan of Leslie. Justin Jackson, Brianna Joy Gray, me and Leslie. And I know that Leslie and Brianna were huge mutual fans and friends. And this is a photo that Leslie's mom loves. It was taken of Leslie in 2014 in Japan. And then this is a photo of Leslie and Spike, his cat with YB. So, and this is another great photo of Leslie. Can you zoom in on that, Brad, or no? Is it possible to do that? Yeah, so sweet. So Leslie and Jackie, or Jackson, their dog, so cute. Very recent photo. Yeah, and then Brad, you're just gonna get up that last tweet. And again, we actually did a fundraiser for Leslie to help raise funds because he was not able to do a lot of work because of long COVID. So his last tweet was, please start taking COVID seriously before more people have to suffer and die. So, oh, he did have a dog cam too, right? For Taco. I forgot about that. Yeah. So everyone, I don't know what to say, except, it's a huge loss. Condolences to his family and to, his spouse, YB. We will be doing a special show on Leslie, honoring him, honoring his activism, his wit, his, brilliance, his humor, his advocacy, and his legacy. I think that's all I'm going to say for now. Again, we'll get back to it another time when we've had time to organize stuff. But I think that's it. Yeah. And we miss you, Leslie. And again, so sorry to everyone who lost someone they either knew in real life, or I know this has been really hard for people who didn't even know him in real life, because that's how big his reach was. Okay. I will see everyone next week. And I'll leave you with this comment, which is heartbreaking. What a sad loss, but his memory will forever lift our spirits. That's true. And we also have his voice, literally his voice recorded. And there's some stuff that hasn't been released yet. So that will live on. Okay. Bye, everyone. See you next week.
Okay, I'm down. You got limits, man. You got limits, man. Okay,